well, and perhaps most importantly, to steal a line from Craig, and also seriously, we are voting on eldership. Two men have felt the lead and the call from the Lord to step into an eldership role. Extremely important for our church. So continue to be in prayer. Listen to the testimony from Julio that's about to happen, and remember from Bob, and please be in prayer. And your vote matters, because those are the men through God on their knees will lead our church. So, without further ado, as they say, I present my brother Julio Ramirez.
So the opposite here, right? It's definitely not too short for me or too tall. Anyways, yeah, when Andy came, or he gave me a call one day and he said, "Have you ever thought about eldership?" I said, "No, not really. I've never really even thought of me being worthy enough of that." But so it's important for me to talk to you guys about how this all came about a year ago. So I'll just start out with talking about who I am. Again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Julio Ramirez, and the reason I say that is because it's important for you guys to know where I come from. And although I did have a coworker a while back said, you know, if I told him where I lived and the people that founded this city, and they said, well, you're just from there. You got a Z in your name, so you're just fine. You know, it's no big deal. It's just might not be in the right spot, but you have a Z in your name, so you're just as part of those folks as the ones that started there still. But no, so nonetheless, so I was born in San Antonio, Texas. I was born actually to two Mexican citizens. My mother was actually a U.S. citizen because of my grandmother, who was born in Fort Worth. But unfortunately, that relationship between my father and my mother really wasn't the typical, or not the typical, but the normal husband and wife relationship. That met at some point and decided that they were going to be together for a while, but never married. Never. I knew he was my dad. I knew she was my mom, but they never introduced themselves as this is my wife, this is my husband. And so for the first part of my life, for the first 5 years of my life, I actually lived with my grandmother in California. And then at some point, my mother just said, you know what, I think it's time for us to be a family. So my mom and my dad were actually living down in Mexico City. And so my sister and I, my sister's 7 years older than I am, we moved down. We moved down to be with my mom and dad, and I grew up there until I was about 10, 11 years old. But unfortunately, my dad just didn't want any part of that, didn't want any part of being a father or having a family. And so, unfortunately, when I was about 11 years old, my mom said, hey, we're leaving. We're leaving. Your dad doesn't want us here anymore, and we have to go. And so, unfortunately, that created a real deep emotion of rejection from my father. And even though I felt love from my mom, you know, as a young man growing up, I didn't have that father figure. And unfortunately, that hole in my heart was always there. And as I grew up, I tried filling it with things that were very destructive in my mind. I tried filling it with other things, with relationships that what I thought would heal that hole, but it never really did. And I've carried that scar into adulthood. And even still, you know, that hole has been filled with Jesus, but that scar is still there, unfortunately. And so for any of you folks that might be able to relate to that story, I'll tell you now how Jesus healed that hole. So as I grew up, I decided to be a pilot. I went to flight school, and God provided a way for me to be able to get my licenses. He kept me alive through many pretty tight situations, flying some not so well-maintained aircraft around the country. And unfortunately, that takes a toll mentally as well. So every time I ran into a situation where I had nowhere to run. I didn't have a father that was supportive. My mom was there, but not really. She would just say, just stay close to God, just stay close to God. And but I didn't really know what that meant. I grew up in a Catholic home, and so it was go to church on Sunday, go through the motions, say the prayers, memorize them, but they never really felt like anything. It felt like I was like reciting multiplication tables, honestly. It never felt genuine. Me talking to thin air. I knew there was a God. That was one thing that was instilled in me by my grandmother and my mother. They said, there is a God. He loves you. But it was never really solidified. It never really took. It was just a saying that I heard. But at the same time, in the back of my mind and deep in my heart, I knew that there was a God for all the things that I was doing, progressing through flight training. I knew it wasn't just by chance. I knew that one God that I didn't really know too well was still watching over me. And so, graduate from college, continue progressing through my career, and I had the pleasure of meeting Sarah in 2003 in northwestern Minnesota. And little did I know that God was using her to bring me to Him. And in 2014, we moved from Burnsville down here to New Prague. And we visit Calvary Church. And for me, the type of service that we do here it didn't make any sense. We're singing for half an hour, and then the next half hour we're listening to a man talk. I'm used to getting up and sitting down and kneeling and doing the prayers, and I'm saying this doesn't make sense. I mean, what am I doing here? I'm used to the Catholic service, but nonetheless, I want to keep the family together. I don't want to create a strained relationship like what I grew up with. For Sarah and I have a 13-year-old son, and I want to make sure that I am the father that I didn't have. But it's still, every time something happened, those bad behaviors, the sinful nature that I have in me continued to take over. And so the harder I tried to be a good person, and what was instilled in me, what the Catholic says, you want to be a good person so God will accept you. But every time I'd go to church, I felt like I wasn't even good enough to be stepping in that building. Even when I was doing the prayers in the Catholic Church, in my mind, in my heart, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to be sitting in this building and saying these prayers, because all the bad that I've done will never be more than the good that I need to be doing so I can please God. So God will be happy with me. I can't say enough Hail Marys. I can't say enough rosaries. I can't say enough of those prayers, because it'd take a lifetime of me to overcome what I've done. And so as we're coming to Calvary Church, one Sunday at the welcome table, there is a Bible reading plan. There's a Bible reading plan that says that it's get through the Bible in 1 year. And unfortunately, by this time I'm flying a 50-seat jet for a regional airline here in the United States, and I'm sitting in the captain's seat. I'm feeling pretty good about where I've come from and where I am. And unfortunately, that pride, fortunately for me, I guess let me. How can I say this? It was God used that pride that I was feeling inside to use that, and He used that to bring me to Him. Because the reason I picked up that Bible reading plan wasn't just so I can truly get to know God and truly get to know the Bible. It was just so I can say, you know what? Nah, I've read through the Bible. Let me add one more accomplishment to my long list of accomplishments, that, if you want to say, that I had done. And so I start reading the Bible, and I truly start getting to know who God is. And He is nothing like the God that had been painted for me, or had been described to me, or even in the Catholic Church. I always thought of God as a God up there who just stands with his arms crossed, and he points his finger at me, and I'm just waiting for, something bad to happen to me because of all the bad things that I had done. So as I'm reading through the Bible, I'm getting to know God more, but at the same time, I'm being convicted more and more of my sin, to the point where I feel like it's crushing me. I feel like I have this picture in my mind where I'm running towards a cliff, and I know what's at the end of the cliff, but I don't care. I'm still running towards it. I'm still heading towards destruction, and I don't care. Until one day, I come up to Pastor Ben, and I said, Pastor Ben, please pray for me. Pray for me, because I feel like I am going to end up in a bad place soon. And even then, I just feel like I can't even approach God. And that's the sad reality, is that some of these religions, some of these trains of thought that are out there make you feel like you are not good enough to approach God and to ask for forgiveness. And so that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at this point where I don't know what to do. I know I can't approach God because I'm not good enough. And so Pastor Ben says, well, what's the matter? And we start talking, and he's like, well, let's sit down and talk. And we start talking, and he just says, why are you feeling this way? And I'm like, well, I've been reading the Bible, and there's no way. I'm reading the Bible, and it says that Jesus has paid the price for you. And that's not even possible. I'm like, how can God love me so much that he sent his son to die on the cross for me without anything in return? Up until this point in my life, I've had to earn every single thing that I've ever had. Unfortunately, those feelings are still out there. You can ask Sarah, she'll buy something for me for birthday or for Christmas, and I'm still terrible at accepting gifts because it just doesn't feel right. It feels like I have to earn anything and everything that I may have in my hand, and unfortunately that's a leftover of the feeling of rejection. But nonetheless, I am just reading the Bible, and one morning we're having breakfast, and I said, well, I'll pay the tab, and Pastor Ben says, well, I'll take care of the tip. And I'm like, no, I'll take care of the tip. And he's like, no. He's like, I'll take care of the tip. I want to do that for you. And I said, well, why? I mean, I want to treat you. And he grabs $1 out of his wallet, and he hands me the $1. And he says, Julio, if I want to give you this $1, I'm not asking you to take this $1 in return for you being my best friend or because you're going to wash my car later. I'm just giving you this simple $1 because I love you and because I want to give you this gift. If you can't, can you just please take this $1? A simple $1 bill. And I was having a hard time just taking it. And so that kind of hit home there. I'm sitting there going, well, if I can't even accept the $1, how am I ever going to be able to accept the gift of salvation? And so I continue reading, get into Hebrews, and I'm constantly, God is just on me. He's saying, Julio, I love you so much that you will never be able to earn my love. You will never be able to do enough for me to love you. You will never be able to do enough good things. You can't buy my love. You can't earn my love. All you have to do is say, okay, I accept that gift of salvation. And so in that battle continued for a good while until finally one day I couldn't fight it anymore. The evidence in this book, and I can tell you for whoever's out there who's saying, I don't know if I can trust the words that are in that book, I can tell you with my whole heart that this is life-changing. It is life-saving. It will definitely show you who God is. It'll show you how much God loves you. And so for me to be asked to be an elder in this church, I can tell you that I will be relying not on myself, not on the things that I can do, but I will be relying on Christ. John 10:30 says, I and the Father are one. And to me, and in John, Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Those verses were eye-opening for me because I know exactly now who I'm praying for. I'm praying to. I know who my Savior is. And I know that I can approach God without shame, without feelings of guilt. I know that when I get on my knees and I pray for this church, for my family, for my son, for myself, for anyone, I know that Jesus' blood has covered all my sins and that I can approach him not with specific prayers, not with a certain way, not with a memorized, but I can come with him just like I'm speaking to you right now with an honest heart saying, God, please help us. And if you'll have me, Calvary Church, that's what I will be. That's what I'll do. That's what I'll do. I'll be praying for every single one of you. I'll be praying for this church so that we know that it is his church. It is not ours. It is not Pastor Ben's. It is not Bob Lubert's or my church. It is God's church. And we will do his will according to whatever he has in store for us. But there will be no side, what am I trying to say here? Sorry. There won't be any side ideas coming from me. I will do what God wants us to do. And so that's who I am, Calvary Church. And just like in everything that we do, I pray that you will pray for this decision. If you're willing to have me, I am willing to serve this church for however long he wants me, my family, to do.